This is Cynde, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
It's definitely not all glory when you're cleaning dead rats out of an old computer.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Cynde Moya is collections manager at Living Computers Museum and Labs. Located in Seattle, Washington, Living Computers is a computer museum that provides hands-on experience using computers ranging from micros to mainframes. Last time I was there was a Xerox Alto and an Apple I, and yes, an Atari 400 available with a number of game cards, plus big iron like a Control Data 6500 and Digital Equipment Corporation PDP-10, all those machines and more usable by visitors. As collections manager, Cynde takes care of the museum's collection and catalogs it. This interview took place on April 9th, 2018.
I'm Cynde Moya, collections manager at Living Computers Museum and Labs. Before I was the collections manager, my title was librarian archivist. So what I do is I take care of the collection and the catalog of the collection.
And how big is the collection?
We have about 45,000 items in the catalog and a great deal more that is in backlog that needs to be cataloged.
Wow.
So I would say two floors, 15,000 square feet each, many of them with racks on which the equipment is placed. So, my typical day is I get here early, excited, ready to go at about 6:30 or 7. And it's kind of nice because nobody else is here. And I warm up by doing my email because I am a manager. There's all these managery things I need to do, like approve people's expenses, code purchase orders, put out little fires. So I do that. And boy, then I am working on several important projects here. So some of it is the catalog itself, so tending to that. Some of it is we're transferring the catalog from a MARC library catalog system to a museum collection management system. So cleaning the data and managing the temps cleaning the data.
Now, when you say the tending to the catalog, are we talking a database of items in a computer somewhere? Are we talking a physical catalog?
Oh, that's very good. We are talking a database of items.
Okay. And when you tend to the catalog, what kind of tending is necessary? Oh, this item is out on loan, or we just added this thing, and what kind of tending is tended?
Most of it is, say, entering the equipment, the manuals, the software. So I make a catalog record for each item, and then you put a barcode on the item, which is then linked to the catalog. So then if you find an item later and want to know what it is, you can just look up the barcode and you'll get the catalog record. Mm-hmm. So that is some of the tending, is just making the records and then putting it away. And everything is numbered. Every location is numbered. Right? Every shelf is numbered. So then you also tell the catalog where you've put it. It's in, row 23, bay 4, shelf E. So that's more tending. So we have to chase the stuff around and make sure that it's always located properly, and train the staff so that they don't take things and put them back in the random places. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that behind the scenes going on, taking care of the collection.
Okay, so you're continuing your day, you're tending to the catalog, you've answered your emails, and now what?
Well, let's see. Today, I did that. I had moved some stuff around last week, and so I changed their locations today because I hadn't done that. And I'm working on this data transfer project, and so we're cleaning the data in the catalog so that everything lines up right And my temp came to me with some issues. He's like, well, these series, they're not in the controlled vocabulary list of the series, so here, you fix these. And since I have been taking care of the series part of the catalog, I went through them and made some decisions. Should I make it into an official series and add it to the controlled vocabulary? Should I just put it in some other series? Or just forget putting it in a series at all? And by series, I mean we have things like the peripherals are all divided up into what they are: video display terminals, teletypewriters, printers, plotters, mice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so those are series. And so you can look in the catalog and say, well, show me all of the mice. And then you'll get a list of all of the mice. Right? Or show me all of the microcomputer CPUs. You'll see all that. Show me all of the PDP-10 family CPUs. You see all that. So that's what the series accomplishes in the catalog. So that's part of the machine that has been built to manage this collection. Now, we don't, when people donate us things, a set of things will come in. It'll be a computer, a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor, a bunch of magazines, the documentation for it, some technical drawings, software on 5 1/4-inch discs. And that, in the catalog, you can recreate the collection, but here we just part it all out. So all of the documents go in with the documents, and all of the 5 1/4s go with the 5 1/4s, and the monitors go with the monitors, and that kind of thing.
So the items are physically separated, but somehow in your database, that this goes with this and that. If you wanted to piece together a working system, you could pull them from they're just disparate locations?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And, we've got multiples. Like, say we've got 15 Macintosh 512s with their keyboards, with their mice. And, okay, so the mouse breaks, so you just put another mouse with it.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's different from other kinds of museums or archives, which are interested in keeping together the donations from the different people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of more like a parts lab in that way, that we part it all out and then use it as a pool for our restorations and exhibits.
Why? What makes it? Why do you do it that way? What makes it different that you want to make it as a parts lab and not a collections-based thing?
Well, this is a living museum, and a lot, the things that we treat like this are more of the commodity computers. There were millions of them made, and it's not necessarily important the person that used it to us. If it is important, if it is some famous person's computer, we would probably suggest that it get donated someplace else that is not going to use it and muck around with it to maintain the provenance. And the types of things that we collect are things that we can do that with, because it's going to break. You're going to have to go in there and resolder some chips or swap out the mouse or the keyboard,
sure,
or something. So we just account for that to begin with.
Okay. I have some more questions about that later, but let's continue with your day. You're still mucking about on the computer. Do you meet with people, have meetings? I don't know. What else happens?
Well, several times a week, my team and I've got a couple of full-time archivists who work for me, and then we also have a couple of temps, and we all stand up and go out and clean up, like the basement. The basement gets pretty shaggy after a while, and there's stuff in the aisles, and And we just go down there together and work for an hour and try to make it better. And we have a similar thing up here on the third floor where a lot of the things have, the racks, they're just not tidy anymore. And we're making a big push this year to, put like things together, right? All of the IBM 5150s are here, and all of the Macintosh classics are there, and all of the keyboards are very carefully laid out in frames that we used our laser cutter to make. And so that's another thing we do. We go out and work together to try to tidy this thing up. What else? I had one of my emails. We use punch cards. We have a punch card, a card punch machine, an IBM 029, that's very popular in the exhibit hall. And we printed our own cards with the logo on it and numbers so that people could type things on it and then take it home as a souvenir. And we're almost out, so we had to chase down the vendor that made us these cards. And so, I had to chase down the ex-employee who had contracted to make the cards and say, send me the contact for it. So that's moving along. I'm waiting for the BizOps at 505 because we're a part of Vulcan. And Vulcan is Paul Allen's holding company, and Vulcan kind of does a lot of stuff. It does all of our most of our operational stuff, like HR and business operations and running the servers. And so we're buying this new collection management system, and they're helping vet it. And they didn't like the first one that I picked, so we've had to pick another one, Plan B collection management system. And now I have to express to them the urgency of acquiring this thing soon because my critical path is off because of the problems with the first vendor. So I'm waiting to hear back from that. What else? We're having an event called Preserve It in a couple of weeks where we are celebrating Preservation Week. And this one will be is called Analog and Digital. And I'll be giving a presentation on my expertise, so I don't have to actually study, talking about the catalog and how we organize our things. So I'm working on these slides. So I spent a little time on that. I've got a pretty good machine running, to intake all of the donations and part them out and catalog them and put them away. So what I tend to do in between management things is pick up the slack. I do the hard stuff, the leftover weirdy things, and stuff that's in my way, and get it cataloged and put away to clear the path so that the other staff can work on smooth projects that they can just, chugga, get out and develop their skills.
So when someone comes to you with something they want to donate, I'm interested in the process of how you decide whether it's something you need. I mean, I suppose sometimes people come to you with big iron, it's maybe something super rare perhaps, or maybe they're coming to you with a box load of Commodore 64s. And so how do you make that decision?
Well, we have a form on our website that asks a set of questions of potential donors. And so if people just come to us at info@, we send them to the form. Say, please fill out this form. And it has, what is the thing? Is it clean? Right? How big is it? What is the extent? Do you have any stories? Because we have been collecting the stories and reusing them because sometimes it's really interesting. The curator particularly likes stories. I told you before I don't care about the provenance, but the curator wants provenance. So we're starting to collect those in our forum and make them more findable. So then we have this forum, and once a month the acquisitions committee meets. And the committee consists of a couple of archivists, several engineers, the curator, and our executive director. And we go through systematically all of these donations, say yes or no, and then I used to do all this correspondence, but now one of my assistants, Amelia, takes care of it. And she takes it and goes and corresponds back with the person, gets the deed of gift, and we will pay for shipping. So if we decide to accept it, once we get the deed of gift, we give them the FedEx number, and they take it down to FedEx office, who packs it up and ships it to us. And then it's a whole other thing of once we get it. And of course, that's for the smaller things, right? A microcomputer. And how do we decide? That's what you want to know. If it's, say, a micro, we look at how many of them do we have already. So we check the catalog and go into the committee, say, well, we've got 4 of these, but none of the software and documentation, and so we can decide, do we want another one? And some of the decision points, well, if it's on exhibit and looks like it's going to be on the floor for a while, we want to have a number of backups. So that's part of our decision. If it's something that we don't have, we kind of tend to take it. If it has a lot of software that we don't have, definitely we'll take it. We're becoming more and more picky and really looking for complete sets, like collector sets. Somebody who really loved this thing for many years and has all the magazines and has all this interesting software and the manuals for the software and that sort of thing. So the completeness of the set. And that's for micros. Looking at big iron, we just had, sometimes people telephone out of nowhere, which is what this recent one came through. Telephoned out of nowhere. I've got this giant collection of IBM stuff in Austria, they say. And, I was going to make a museum, but I never did. And now it's time to let it go. And so then we sent someone out to Austria to go and examine it. And then we came back, and the acquisitions committee all looked at the photographs. We were like, look at that, look at this. It's dirty, it's complete, it's all hooked together, it used to work. It's got all these ALDs and software. So, it's this exquisite collection, and you could see, the dollar signs of horror racking up in our brains, like, where are we going to put this? Mm-hmm. How are we going to ship it? And then if it's something big like that, we go to the owner and see if he really wants it. And if he does, he says, buy it.
When you say go to the owner, you mean Mr. Allen?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. We take this to Mr. Allen and propose it to him. And he's a collector. He likes to collect things.
Sure.
He likes to see this stuff working, and that's one of the things we do.
So this is basically Paul Allen's playground, right? He just likes to have. It seems like he could have created this for his own personal sandbox and not shared it with the world, but instead he decided to create a museum so he can have his sandbox and share it too. That's kind of my sense of it. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I think, Paul is really good about sharing his toys. And, he's done it with his airplanes and with some of his other collections. And having his own pet engineers taking care of his computers, which is how it started out. But it just became big enough that other people were interested, and it's a thing that can be made use of by a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that for him.
Nice. So what are the biggest challenges in your job?
Oh, boy. I think for every museum, one challenge is space.
Yeah.
Everybody runs out of space. You start collecting stuff, and then you have more stuff than you can put in your space. But that's not a very interesting challenge, really. Some of it is, for me, finding archivists that know about computers. It's really not out there. So I have to find people who are willing to learn. And it takes a long time to learn. It took me a long time to learn, about the computers and how they fit in and what to do with them. So just, I know I've got some good people, and they've been here a long time, and they're, through exposure and every day talking to the engineers and things, are learning more and more about the equipment. But, I've seen the catalog at Computer History Museum, and you can tell that they've had a lot of people making these catalog records, and they have made a lot of mistakes. And I am concerned about mistakes in the catalog, misidentifying things that will be, 30 years down the road will be a real problem for people. Trying to put this stuff back together. So that's a challenge of, encouraging learning, providing opportunities for learning for both our temps and the permanent archivists. And you can't teach enthusiasm for it. Certainly I have good archivists, but it's archival practice is a general thing, and this particular museum is a very specific thing. Another challenge is we have all of this software on obsolete carriers, and slowly but surely we're working on ways to read it onto, say, a hard drive, right? And then preserve it in that way, software preservation. And I'm working with the Software Preservation Network, which is a consortium about this. Most of the literature and discussion is thinking about software from the hard drive forward era. And we are pre-hard drives. So everything before hard drives. And, there's no good controlled vocabulary out there for these carriers, like, DEC tapes and 5 1/4 inch things and disc packs and DEC packs and link tapes. So we're making it up ourselves, which is taking a lot of time. And so that's a big challenge that we're facing, and I'm really enjoying that part of it. And of course, reading this stuff, like, do you know what a disc pack is?
Yes.
It's like a 10-layer cake that's about 15 inches around,
Sure.
7 inches high, and there's 12 discs in there, and it's read by this thing, a disc drive that's about the size of a washing machine. And we have a lot of them, these disk drives, but they're really hard to keep running, and they're very sensitive to dust and smoke. And so say we've got one copy, the last copy of some sort of TOPS 10 software set, and we don't want to stick it in the disk drive because we're afraid it's going to break. So now they're trying to make a slow speed disk pack reader robot that, and I guess they'll open it up and take out each platter one at a time and stick it in this robot, and the robot will try to read the tracks, and then you'll have to interpret it. So that's a big challenge for the engineers. And then I have to be on the other side. I have to make catalog records for the physical thing itself, right? The carrier. Now I've got a record for it. And then once they read it, attach that blob to the record, hopefully in such a way that the blob can be used in an emulator. And so then you have to include that in the metadata. What's the emulator? So these are challenges around emulation, what kind of metadata to save, the physical thing itself, what sort of drive you need to read the physical thing itself, and do we have it, and can we, can they restore it? So being a part of that is a great, exciting challenge, particularly because it's the old stuff, these old funny media carriers that.
Right. And you might get one chance to read some of these things, right, before the bits flake off.
Yes, exactly. And so we have to preserve them in a decent enough environment until then. And, that's like what, CD-ROMs are only supposed to last 10 to 25 years. So then you have to read them onto something. And then once they're on something, 10 years later, your hard drive is going to be obsolete and there'll be something else. Rest assured. So then you have to migrate it to whatever, the meta drive of the future is going to be. So every 10 years, and then you have to track that in the metadata. What was it like now? How did you migrate it? Is the hash the same? Did you drop any bits in the migration? So, those are big questions. Here, it's a little smaller, right? We're just trying to, copy a game from a 5 1/4 disc and then rewrite it onto another 5 1/4 disc, which seems easy, but it's not, because there's like 15 different kinds of 5 1/4 discs, and some of them have rights management, and some of them, are copy protected, and right, you know about that. It's madness, right?
Yeah.
The effort it takes to get one thing copied is it's really a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But we're I've had an intern a couple of years ago, and I've got another intern coming this year, and we're working on writing manuals and CryoFlux and SuperCard Pro and all of that stuff.
So it seems I talked with Leif Carlson a little bit about this last month, but I just want to mention it to you. It seems like there's got to be a real, like, just this pull in opposite directions between wanting to have these things working, have them in operable format, and actually doing the Living Computer Museum's mission of letting people use them. And so you could have wear and tear, you're going to have chips go bad, and that sort of thing. So you feel like the mission is pulling you in two directions of have it and yet have it work?
Having things work is really our primary mission, I think. If we want, Computer History Museum, most of their things they do not restore. So I consider them our sister organization, our complementary organization. CHM holds the index copy, right? The thing that you don't touch. And then we have a bunch of them, and we mess around with them all we want, because we know that CHM is going to have that pristine copy sitting there. So that's some of it, about, say, a museum. In some way, what's wrong with people touching this stuff? People think of museums and you have a barrier and you're not supposed to touch it, and we have to preserve it forever in its pristine state, and in its full collection. And why? Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, why? Why? We're trying to make these things live, and that's part of why we're picking things without a lot of provenance and mixing them up and making sure that we can keep them going for a long time. Eventually, of course, we're going to run out of them, right? And then what, right? Well, then the project's over.
Right. Are there bitter arguments among archivists about the best way to do it? Like, I just imagine a CHM-like person, I'm not talking about the organization, but just like that kind of person going like, oh, you must never power it on and must never use it. And then there's other people saying, well, yeah, let's play with it. It seems like there have to be all sorts of bitter arguments, technical arguments amongst you people all the time.
I don't know. I don't feel particularly bitter about it, but I think both of us think that we are doing the superior project, right? That we are running it. We think it's the best. That they're not, well, that's just too bad that they're like that. But, really, I actually see it as very complimentary. I'm really glad we're both out there doing this thing because we can, together, we're enriching the field even more.
Yeah.
So, I think I have seen in other literature, like what is authenticity, right? And with a museum object, what if you use an aftermarket bolt to put the thing back together? Does it start losing its authenticity? Is it not the same thing? And it with the computers that we have, it does sort of grade out. Where we've used some new bolts. Oh, and then we put in, then we emulated the memory because the dang core memory is too hard to keep running. Okay, is that the same thing now? No, then we, you can't find the controller for the tape, so we made the tape controller. And then that's going, this tape drive, it's too big of a pain to keep running, so let's just emulate that too. And then what? Right, then you have, we have these sort of bizarre Frankenstein's monsters of CPUs that are running with emulated disks and it is a question.
Yeah.
Is it authentic? Well, it's hard to say. Is it important? What's important about it? So, I think I'm part of a study right now that has questions like that of museums that have running things and what do they think about authenticity? And I feel that perhaps I just need to give up on the idea of authenticity in order to do the work that we're doing here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like you have opinions about shelving, though. I laughed and laughed at your LinkedIn profile, which I want to read here. Specialties: planning the placement of shelving, building shelving units, installing more shelves into shelving units, putting the collection into shelves, making catalog records that we can put to find the things on the shelves, finding new warehouses in which to install even better shelves.
Yes, I'm shelf obsessed.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, your job is knowing where to find things. Seems like
that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Right, and the job is, and why do I want to know how to find things? Because I'm trying to help the engineers restore the computers. And they need to find things to do that. They need to find the things. They need to find the documents. They want to find the technical drawings. And that was my first helping people. Right, the first reason for the archives was the engineers and the restorations. And recently we've gotten all of the other impedimenta of a museum: marketing, events, education, right, curator. We have a curator, and all of these people also want to use the collection for things, and it's kind of changed the way I catalog things. Say, making more references if it's got really good photos, if it's got a good cover, if it's a real charismatic computer, they will want to know about that. And so I try to make records like that. And again, it has to be findable. And it has to be at least sort of archival, right? In nice boxes and acid-free folders and numbered in a way that people can understand. and quickly, without a lot of training. And shelves, of course. When I first started, it was just like bare warehouse with stuff was on pallets.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of a couple of years, that shelf obsession was happening. Every 2 months, I'd have a crew come in and they'd build another 15 racks, and then we'd clear off the pallets and put them on the, and then they'd come again. Then we started working on the basement with the same thing, and we're almost shelved up. But now we're going to potentially rent another warehouse that maybe I'll get pallet racks in there. Oh, and a big forklift. That's going to be fun. My archival forklift.
Nice. I'm interested how you got here, how you got to this job. It looks like you have a PhD in human sexuality, and then how do you get from there to being a collections manager?
Well, my origin story. My father was an electrical engineer, and he had his own, after a while, a engineering and manufacturing company where he made small, miniature, high-performance tape drives. And I made, personally, a lot of these miniature high-performance tape drives, soldering them together. At the time...
Like for audio or for data or what?
This is for data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's one in a submarine. There's one in like the SR-71 Blackbird, that kind of thing. That works under really high Gs and temperature ranges. So at the time, my father, he trained my brother to be an engineer, and he trained me to be useful to engineers. Now, I guess you can take that where you want it. It kind of made me mad, but nonetheless, as it turns out after the years, I am very useful to engineers. So that's the short. At university, I did study the history of science and technology, the sociology of science and technology. It was very early. It's really before STS, Science Technology Studies, took off. So it was just a specialization, and there wasn't a lot about computers at the time. It was more like history of physics, history of chemistry, but it was pretty fun. And I morphed over to studying sexology, getting my PhD in sexology, which was a lot of fun, but I discovered I did not want to be a public sexologist. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed what I learned and doing a lot of archival work in that. But, then I saw this gig come up, help catalog and preserve a collection of mini computers. And I was like, that's my job, right? That's it. It was obvious to me that was a thing that I could really do. And it turns out I can really do it. And I've really been enjoying it. I've been really growing from just doing it to making the machine and getting more people to do it. And then now the machine operates itself somewhat in my absence, and so I can do other things like present about the museum in conferences and write papers and talk to you. And so it's been a really great career for me. I prefer being a public software preservationist.
Awesome. So what haven't I asked you about your job that I should have?
Dust.
Dust?
Dust never sleeps. Yeah, that's a big problem also is
Really?
dust and trying to keep this stuff clean. It is, especially in the basement. There's a vent. There's a door, but there's a vent that goes out to the street, and so somehow that dust is getting in. We've had a couple of rounds of putting in drywall here and there, and when they put in drywall, then they tape it and then they sand it, and that stuff that is so fine, this fine white sanded drywall dust. And, they tried to put up plastic and things, but it's seeped out, and it's so there's a lot of wiping involved, right? It's definitely, I like to wear pants the color of dirt because I really am crawling around or, crawling inside of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very pretty all the time. I mean, some of these things are really dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not all glory when you're cleaning dead rats out of an old computer. Let's see, what else haven't you asked me? Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go to lunch, and then I'm going to come back, and I have been rearranging stuff on the shelves. We're putting more like things together, and then I will probably work on my presentation some more, and I'll stand up and walk around and talk to the engineers and see what they're up to. When the museum is open, Wednesday through Friday, I usually go down and play a game or two of Galaga, because I really am bad at that. So. But finally, I have the opportunity to learn.
Nice. This is an Atari podcast, allegedly, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask if you had any stories or anything involving Atari computers in your back pocket.
Well, we have a couple of 2600s on display. It's somewhat controversial. I mean, we have, tried not to have consoles and games out there, but there's a lot of people here, engineers and operations manager, who are really enthusiastic about these console games. So we've made little living room sets and the 2600 sitting in there, and we have a number of others like, we got the 400 on exhibit with its cartridges, and we have a lot of 800s and 1000s and 1600s and 600s, and we were just discussing last week, how important is it to separate these out? Because this is one of the lines of our catalog where we want to say about the software, what computer it goes on. And one of our control vocabulary terms is this Atari. They're saying, do we say, Atari 400, Atari 800, and separate them out onto separate lines? Or are some of them compatible, and could we keep them on the same line because of the software? And so we've been examining our collection of software, particularly, not the cartridges so much because those are easy, but 5 1/4 and 3 1/2 diskettes for the Ataris, and wondering how it fits into these different kinds of Ataris, and saying, how do we find this out? Maybe you could tell me, because that's my Atari problem of the week.
Well, I mean, the brief answer is most of the software will work pretty well across the Atari 8-bit line. Some of the early software will only work on the 400 and 800 because it used basically calls to things that it shouldn't have that broke when the XL and XE line came out. And some of the stuff only relies on will only work on the later machines because they require features of the XL or the XE only. So the answer is most of the time it should be fine unless it's not. I know it's not super helpful, but...
Well, it's a little helpful. Definitely. I appreciate it. So there's kind of my take on the Atari is, how do I make catalog records for it that will help us use the software?
Nice. So you were I think you were telling me when we talked at the Vintage Computer Festival, there was something about the Atari 400 that's on display, and it tends to break because people put cartridges in. Were you telling me that?
Yes.
Can you tell me again?
Well, there is the 400, when you open up the plastic thing, it kind of consists of one board with some other boards. And on that board is a plastic mount And that's the thing that accepts the cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
And this plastic mount will break after a while. Those 400s pretty indestructible. It's pretty solid. But after a while, with users who are using it all the time, right? They just cram it in there. They put it in backwards or something and bang on it. It'll break. So one of our engineers was trying to design a 3D printed replacement for that plastic mount.
Mm-hmm.
And install it in there. And it actually worked pretty well. And that's one thing that we do for a lot of stuff here in the museum. If we can't find replacements, we'll 3D print it.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have what I need. Thank you so much.
Well, Kevin, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. And hello to your listeners. That's about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynde.
Thank you, Kevin.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute, there are 2 ways you can help. You can help fund these interviews directly by contributing to my Patreon. A small monthly contribution will help offset the expenses of making these oral history interviews. Contribute at patreon.com/Savitz. Or make a tax-deductible contribution to the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library that has done incredible things to preserve computer history. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate. Thanks.